On behalf of the Labour Party and the Obidati Presidential Campaign Organization, and also in consonance with the people, I thank you, members of the press, for your dedication and diligence in continuing to cover the unfolding timeline of the tragic 2023 presidential elections to its logical and just conclusion. It is fair to say that so many of our national problems have gotten worse because we, as a people, have not adequately risen to the challenge of effecting the right solutions when they recur to put them permanently in check. Given the extent of the fraud, impunity, conspiracy, deceit, financial waste, and democratic impediment orchestrated and effected in the 2023 elections, and the increased interest, awareness, and participation of our people in partnering practically to bring genuine change to our country at this time, it is imperative that we as a people do not again fall to the complacent hopelessness that has aided recurrence and deterioration, but that we pursue the required rectification and legal correction required to ensure that the will of the people, as expressed in 2023 elections, are firmly and rightly upheld. While it is often said that government or governance is a continuum, and the administrative formalities following the bizarre declarations by INEC have been put in place, the election today remains under legal contest and cannot be concluded until the legal processes have been rightly and judiciously exhausted. There is no doubt that these 2023 elections represent a significant and overwhelming watershed in our country's electoral, political, and development history. And at this time, the entire nation and the international community also stand determined to ensure that electoral fraud and the manipulation of the true will of the people will not stand as the foundation for bad governance in the past have been concretized by the acceptance of such illegality and conspiracy. Having concluded the hearing stage at the Presidential Election Petition Court in Abuja, the attention of the people and the international community remains transfixed on the judiciary, and with it, the expectation that the glaring wrongs, as documented by all observer groups, local and international, will be corrected for the good of the nation. We commend in particular, without equivocation, the courage, sense of focus, and clarity of thought expressed by various election observer groups, local and international, that were duly accredited to monitor the elections. The Nigerian Civil Society Situation Room, the United States National Democratic Institute, and National Republican Institute, Joint International Election Observer Mission, the European Union Election Observer Team, Commonwealth Observer Group, the African Union, AU, ECOWAS, and all other regional and local observers all deserve commendation. Their doggedness in field engagement, despite the onslaught of violence, inducement, manipulation, and all manner of evil as witnessed in the elections, will serve not only as an unbiased record of the tragic events, but as motivation for its logical conclusion and inevitable resolution according to the will of the people. In critically and broadly examining the independent reports of the various observer missions, the consistency in their experiences and exposition cannot be overlooked, as each and every observer group underline the fact that the elections fell short of citizens' expectations legal regulations, and moral and international standards. The Nigerian civil society room, the umbrella group for the majority of national NGOs involved in monitoring the elections, described the elections in its comprehensive report, and I quote, as a missed opportunity in Nigeria's democratic development. They further reported that credibility of the 2023 elections was greatly tarnished by numerous pitfalls. The election suffered several lingering deficiencies in election administration, including inefficient management of permanent voters' cards, PVC distribution, failure of operational and logistical arrangements, malfunctioning of election technology, inefficient handling of results management procedures, lack of transparent results collation and declaration process, and poor crisis communication. It further underlined that public confidence in the credibility of the electoral process and the capacity of INEC to conduct elections is gravely shaken, and that extraordinary efforts will be required to re-establish trust. It further posited that yet on election day, Nigerians were deeply disappointed by the glitches experienced in the use of IREF. Situation Room observed that election officials in many polling units were unable to access the IREF portal and to uphold results of the presidential elections. There were reports of election officials who either refused or were unable to uphold results. The Civil Society Situation Room also emphasized that no presidential election result was uploaded to the IREF portal as at 8 p.m. on the election day. In instances where upload occurred, the results were not legible or was defaced. Some uploads were not relevant as pictures of individuals or scenes on the location were uploaded. Going further to state that the seemingly high-handed manner in which the chairman of INEC, who served as a national coalition officer for the presidential election, handled proceedings during the results collation exercise, further eroded public confidence in the elections. The failure of the chairman of INEC to properly consider appeals for review of results from some states in the light of the malfunction of IREF, as well as the apparent haste with which the collation process was concluded in an unusual hour, provided the basis for some observers to question the credibility of the collated results. Quote, end quote. I hope you realize that what these are observations by the civil society in Nigeria. They are not my opinions. So that you can properly contextualize what I'm saying. The NDI, NRI, American International Election Observer Mission, whose parent bodies had, prior to the elections, deployed resources in voter education and so many other areas in aid of a credible outcome, in their own report, submitted, and I quote, the 2023 elections in Nigeria fell short of citizens' legitimate and reasonable expectations. Significant logistical, technological, and communication failures by INEC, divisive rhetoric by political parties, political violence, regional disparities in electoral integrity, instances of vote manipulation, and marginalization of key populations marred the electoral process and disenfranchised voters negatively, and disenfranchised voters, negatively impacting on key aspects of the election process. The report went further. Quote, The portal was not in compliance with open election data principles and did not provide the information in a complete, bulk, or machine analyzable format, limiting the ability of citizens to verify results at the local government area levels, state and national level, or to fact-check contradictory narratives. A significant percentage of the results uploaded to the IREF were unreadable. Furthermore, at the time of publication, INEC had still not uploaded more than 9,000 presidential polling units out of 136 nationwide to the IREF, and did not clarify how many of these units were cancelled. Unquote. In conclusion, the NDI-NRI observer mission held that INEC's lack of transparency and communication regarding the cause and extent of this problem undermined confidence in the process, especially in those zones and among parties that consider those areas their strongholds. The NDI-NRI further recommended that INEC, the police, and the courts should identify and prosecute those responsible for electoral violence or manipulation during the 2023 elections, further recommending that the international community should sanction and name government and party officials who orchestrated, tolerated, or encouraged electoral violence or manipulation during the 2023 election cycle. On its own, the European Union Election Observer Mission also presented a most comprehensive and analytical report. It stated clearly, and I quote, "The 2023 general elections did not ensure a well-run, transparent, and inclusive democratic process, as assured by INEC. Public confidence and trust in INEC was severely damaged during the presidential poll and was not restored in state-level elections." It went further to state that abuse of incumbency by various political office holders distorted the playing field, and that public confidence gradually decreased and was severely damaged on 25th February due to its operational failures and lack of transparency, and that multiple missteps and lack of transparency before the polls, compounded by severely delayed display of presidential result forms, dashed the public trust in election technologies used. INEC failed to give a timely and comprehensive explanation for the failures on 25th February. Unquote. The EU Observer Report further underlined, and I quote, on 25th February, voting was critically delayed by the late arrival of sensitive materials, and during the early stages of the collation, presidential results forms from polling units were not displayed with time on the IREF as committed to by INEC and anticipated by all stakeholders. The critical failure in the entire election process manifested at collation stage on 25th of February due to widespread disorganization, a lack of adherence to prescribed procedures, and an unsuitable environment. By the time of the declaration of presidential results, 1/4 of result forms were still missing from the IREF portal, and a significant percentage of the forms uploaded on IREF, often needed for comparison with manual results, were not legible. Unquote. That's the European Union extracts from the European Union Observer Team's document. Finally, in paragraph 17, page 7 of its own report, the ECOWAS Election Observer Mission stated that incidents of violence, killings, and disruption were recorded in several states The mission deplores the unfortunate incidents that occurred in the lead up to E-Day, leading to loss of life in some parts of the country. These include the murder of the Labour Party presidential senatorial election for Enugu East, alongside 5 of his supporters. Ladies and gentlemen, I've gone into detail in highlighting the consistency in the observations of different independent observer groups and the severity of their condemnation of the election process because of recent mischievous attempts to discountenance the uniformity of all reports on the level of manipulation and illegality executed at the last elections. The Labour Party and the Obidati Presidential Campaign Organization hereby condemn vehemently the negative and jaundiced responses on the EU report and other election observers' reports by the spokesperson of the APC administration and other ill-informed persons which are totally in discord with the mood of the nation at this time and which also present an embarrassing contrast to their selective celebration of the 2019 election reports from these same observer groups. We advise that those who have deployed hired protesters to the offices of the EU in respect of their election report desist from any further wastage of public funds, as the objective of intimidation is without basis and has failed from the beginning, because indeed the irregularities in the election were so excessively glaring, with bitter personal and reported experiences by the overwhelming majority of Nigerians. The EU Election Observer Mission, as well as the Civil Society Situation Room, NDI/RI, YIAGA, etc., are all INEC accredited observer groups, as well as very credible and long-standing international and local stakeholders in the Nigerian democratic process, whose reports are an essential contribution towards strengthening Nigeria's democracy. We would like to point Nigerians at this stage to the fact that the EU Observer Group report is in tandem with the reports of other international and domestic observers, duly accredited by INEC, and also in tandem with public opinion and the experience of the majority of Nigerian citizens who participated in or observed the 2023 general elections. At this juncture, there is no doubt that Nigerians and the international community expect the judiciary to critically examine the evidence, the law, and the processes of these flawed elections in arriving at a legally correct and overwhelmingly acknowledgeable verdict. We urge the people of Nigeria, youths, elders, voters, and all citizens to continue to follow the legal process patiently, keenly, and peacefully to a final resolution. In conclusion, we commend the international community and civil society for their continued support in growing and consolidating our democracy. It is now only logical, bolstered by the final Observer Group reports, that the international community take immediate and appropriate punitive action against Professor Mahmoud Yakubu, Barrister Festus Okoye, and other top administrative and field staff of INEC, directly complicit in the desecration of the results. We also demand unequivocally the immediate dismissal from office and prosecution of Professor Yakubu, and the commencement of forensic financial investigation into the expenditure of budgeted disbursements and donors' funds received by INEC, not least of which is the 300 billion naira appropriated from the National Purse, as well as other funds and materials received from international donor agencies. Once again, we thank you, the media, for your continued dedication in reporting this extended resolution, and Nigerians all over the world for their alertness and steadfastness. On February 25th, 2023, we came out to draw the line and halt our country from the putrid domination of bad governance by voting for vision and for competence. A new Nigeria is indeed possible. Thank you for your time and patience in listening to me.
Thank you very much.
Of the response of the Abia State government to handle what has been requested of it, if it is indeed extended to. That's why it's government. We don't dictate to officials elected on our party. We will take that into consideration and respond appropriately. The only point I want to make is that going forward, every step taken by this administration should reflect, with this president, at least until cases are concluded, should reflect the reality of the economic situation of the country, especially as it affects the majority of Nigerian citizens. The Constitution of Nigeria allowed for nominations from 36 states. I do not think we should go beyond that in recognition of the stark economic hardship that is confronting our people. It's also constitutionally guaranteed a 5-year term. So that is why, I don't know the intentions of the president. That's why it cannot be removed and why they call it suspension. The same attitude should be applied to the INEC. The INEC has done enough damage that merits, being sanctioned accordingly. Ideally, anybody who has committed the kind of gross abuse of office that INEC has committed should resign. But we are in Nigeria where, all things. So that of CBN and EFC will remain a selective approach to justice. If INEC, whose wrongdoing actually has greater consequences, for the well-being of the nation. There is a point I would like to make, please listen very well. Now, from all the Observer group reports, what you will note, and even from Nigeria, among the majority of Nigeria, is the severe condemnation of INEC in all facets of. Now, is it not contradictory to expect that an agency that thus stands condemned will produce a honest result? I mean, there's something contradictory in saying that somebody is a thief, and then something is stolen, and said, no, it's not him. He has stole a thing. So this is a big conundrum or contradiction for us to establish. If INEC is guilty as charged, that puts into contention an untenability of the results from such a compromised agency. The was saying something about the INEC, the resident electoral commissioner in Lama State. You can see the efforts being made by the authorities in Abuja in quite an escapist manner, trying to say they want to discipline when they are the father of all the wrongdoings. There's nothing that the INEC direct man in Adamawa has done that this INEC in Abuja has not done 10 times worse. So, physician, heal thyself. You are pointing at the beam in somebody's eyes and forgetting the log, in your own eyes. So you see that, as I said, look, you can say we as parties, we as a party, we are partisan, right? So we have reservations and criticism. But what about objectively independent organizations, both in Nigeria and outside, coming to a consensus that this INEC is not credible? If the INEC is not credible, how can we expect results emanating from that same group to be credible? So this is the reason I think they've done enough damage, and at the very minimum, Chinaza, you were saying that if he has any shame, he will have resigned. But if the president has the political will, there are ways of going around that. It can be suspended from office, just like what they have done to the CBN government. So it's all, the only thing required is political will to do the right thing. But being the beneficiary of INEC's mischief, I wouldn't put it. I don't expect that. But they have precedences, if in truly they are being honest with Nigerians. You remember the late president, Umaru Yar'Adua, that we quite openly acknowledged that, INEC and the results that were declared, they lack credit, but they are not of. And so he went ahead to set up an election review committee under Justice Mohammed Ways, to move Nigeria towards the objective of attaining credibility in election management. President Jonathan, Goodluck Jonathan, did a similar thing. And so of course you remember that he didn't even wait for the elections to be concluded before doing what they do in established advanced democracies, and that is to save the country from trauma, from bickering, by calling President Buhari to come and, So, and of course at that time, you remember the conduct of these same APC people. They went so far as calling for the formation of a parallel government. So you can see the contrast in the conduct of what we have today and what we have then. But more importantly, of course, is INEC. One of the problems of Nigeria is impunity. People will do wrong things, commit grievous offenses without any sanction. If this INEC, the chairman are not sanctioned, what will be the disincentive of future chairman of INEC not to do the wrong thing? After all, nothing will happen to you. Sure, of course. I mean, we have faith in the judiciary, but it's not a blind faith. We are also looking for, but I think in this instance, on account of the magnitude of the responsibility that is put on their shoulders, that they will do the right thing. In terms of proving our own case, I think we have done it beyond reasonable doubt, categorically. And of course, the PDP also has its own, so there is sufficient, overwhelming evidence, for us to expect justice. But the INEC again, from the proceedings, it is ironical, tragically so. The crux of INEC's presentation so far that I witnessed was the argument against believing in beavers and iron. Their own argument that they want to smuggle in is that the law permits them at one stage or the other to do things manually. So you then ask the question, so what was the purpose of the hundreds of billions, expended on this technology if you had the same INEC that their own argument, the crux of their argument is malfunctioning of what they say, contrived malfunctioning. So, so there are several aspects that this is a country in which majority of people hardly could feed themselves 3 times a day. And then you find an agency, public agency, being invested from money for hundreds of billions, not to talk with what the international community donated, especially people like the European Union, also made billions of donations, and at the end of the day, they will say, go to court. And then when they get to court, the argument is that this is what the chairman and his public affairs commissioner, I'm sure you will have seen their video clips, where they were swearing heaven and earth that this will be the best election. The Beavers and Arabs. Now, what they are arguing in the case and their lawyers is that the law permits INEC to us to do things manually. So, how do you, the Nigerian public, so billions down the drain?